On January 22nd, 1960, Michael Kelland Hutchence was born in Sydney, Australia. He was the oldest son of Kelland, an international exporter, and Patricia, a makeup artist. When Michael was 5 years old, the family moved to Hong Kong. Sister Tina Hutchence.
Life was very different in Hong Kong. It's all cocktail parties and dinner parties, and everybody at the party is from a different country.
Young Michael was a bashful kid who fought his shyness with a strong will to achieve. In athletics and the arts, Mother Patricia Glossop.
He loved music. He had little guitars. He always learned guitar. He learned Spanish classical guitar.
We were exposed to a lot of different kinds of music, Ella Fitzgerald and Tony Bennett, and yet I was listening to the Stones and the Beatles.
In the early 70s, Michael's parents separated, and in 1975, 15-year-old Hutchence moved with his mother to Southern California. Michael loved the laid-back attitude of L.A., but his father, Kelland, was not too enamored with the American school system. In 1976, the 16-year-old left his mother in Los Angeles and moved back to Sydney. Brother Rhett Hutchence.
He was the new kid at school, so he was getting picked on a daily basis. So Andrew Farris came up and told these guys they better lay off, and that's when they first became friends.
A guitarist and songwriter, 16-year-old Andrew Farris was starting his own band. Hutchence was interested, but Farris didn't need another guitar player.
He said, "Michael, do you want to try sitting in? We just need someone to sing along with us so we can practice." And turned out that he had a good voice.
In 1977, Michael, Andrew, and a friend, Gary Beers, formed a band called Dr. Dolphin. After adding Andrew's brothers Tim and John, along with another friend, Kurt Pengilly, the band evolved into the Farris Brothers. In the summer of 1977, the Farris family moved to Perth, 4,000 miles from Sydney on the remote west coast of Australia. 17-year-old Michael was determined to stay in the band, which meant he had to move to Perth as well. Hutchence appealed to his parents, Father Kelland Hutchence.
He said to me, actually, "Look, Dad, I'll give it a year and see how I go. And if we don't make it, well then, I'll come back and finish off more of my education."
I didn't like to let him go, but he had to follow his dream.
Hutchence stayed with the Farris family in Perth, where he and Andrew spent hours together writing songs. Michael displayed a knack for catchy yet profound lyrics. Biographer Michael G.
What he talked about in his songs was about love, the pain of love, the loss of love, the death, and he said it without cliché.
In contrast to Sydney, Perth was a small city surrounded by rugged Australian outback. Here the band came of age. Friend Greg Pirano.
They were playing mining towns. Me and he worked 12 hours underground. Once a week they'd go and get blind drunk.
In 1979, after 18 months in Perth, the boys returned to Sydney with a new sound and a new name, courtesy of fellow Aussie band Midnight Oil.
One of the roadies with Midnight Oil came up with the name. "You guys are so excessive, you're over the top."
So excessive became INXS.
And Mike was this skinny, arms, legs kind of kid. If you stood at the back room and watched, the girls in the audience gravitated to the front.
Word of mouth spread rapidly about INXS. By 1980, they were the hottest ticket in town. Michael soon emerged as the group's charismatic leader.
I just couldn't believe that these guys were evolving with such a following. I just felt so proud. I thought, that's my little boy up there. Suddenly he's becoming a rock star.
Spearheading Australia's hottest rock band installed newfound self-confidence in the shy Hutchence. In 1980, the band released its first record titled INXS. Also in 1980, Michael began dating 18-year-old film student Michelle Bennett. 20-year-old Hutchence quickly developed a strong bond with the down-to-earth Bennett, but Michael's commitment was tested by his pop idol status.
He used to come into the studio and say, "Mum, do you have a time to do my makeup for photographs?" The moment he left the makeup room, there'd be about 5 actresses running to sit in the chair that Michael was sitting in.
Personal manager Martha Troop.
He would get that audience in his hand within 60 seconds. And he had a certain charisma about him, and a certain way he moved.
But for all of Michael's onstage bravado, the hypnotic singer with the sexy style harbored deep-seated insecurities.
Mike was a person who needed a friend in the night and a friend in the dark a lot of the time. I think Michael had a lot of demons that chased him throughout his life.
One of those demons was fame.
There's a bit of a dichotomy in Michael that half of him wanted to be a superstar, I think, and half of him didn't want to be a superstar.
Michael began to explore other avenues to escape the growing mania. Television director Nick Egan.
He does cocaine, he smokes joints, he takes ecstasy, and there were other times, yeah, when I felt like he wanted to live like a bohemian and let's get wasted and, you know, maybe it'll trigger something.
But Michael's indulgences rarely got in the way of his performances.
There were times when he woke up the next day going, what the hell did I do? I'm crazy, I've got to get out of here. But you know what, he was one of those people that had been doing that for a long, long time. And there are certain people's constitution, look at Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones, the constitution just manages to deal with that. They still manage to function.
And function he did. In July 1985, 25-year-old Hutchence thrilled his largest audience when INXS opened the Sydney segment of the Global Live Aid charity concert. Michael's star was rising, and so was the pressure. The bigger INXS became, the bigger the entourage. To escape the stress, Hutchence took a break from singing to seek out another challenge, acting. In 1986, the 26-year-old singer made his big screen debut in the independent Australian film Dogs in Space.
And are you discovering anything new in yourself that you've got through acting?
Actually, it's been getting away from music is the best thing about it. I'm discovering things about our music by being away from it.
In 1987, INXS released Kick. The album sold 9 million copies and yielded 4 top 10 singles.
And that was a pivotal album. That went from the album where they were kind of a cool band that sold 1 million albums to Michael becoming a superstar.
But fame began to weigh on the singer. Michael's demanding schedule put a heavy strain on his relationship with girlfriend Michelle Bennett. As 1987 drew to a close, the couple called it quits.
Michelle's a no bullshit person. She's the kind of person that tells you, hey, you know, you're out of line. And I think Michael actually said to me one time he wants some bullshit from somebody. He wants to be like, oh, Michael, you know.
With his newfound freedom, Hutchence guiltlessly indulged his appetite for beautiful women.
On certain nights, his bedroom became a sort of revolving door where 1, 2, 3 and 4 might pass through in the space of 3 or 4 hours, depending on how wound up Michael was feeling that evening.
Michael's popularity didn't sit well with the other members of INXS.
I think the other people in the band always looked on him as a bit of a threat. It's very hard to confide in a group of people who kind of resent some of the attention you're getting.
To prevent a potential rift, Hutchence went out of his way to avoid stealing the show. Publicist Mitch Schneider.
Michael Hutchence was offered lots of covers of magazines, but as their publicist and per their management, we were told INXS is a group, not Michael Hutchence solo, scenes.
For 18 months, the band toured the world, and Michael felt the effects of the grueling schedule. For 8 years, Hutchence lived and breathed INXS. His success with the band had provided Michael with all the spoils of fame. In 1988, the weary 28-year-old took a break. In 1988, 28-year-old Michael Hutchence wanted to distance himself from his INXS image. First, he cut his hair. Then he dove into an avant-garde solo project entitled Max Q.
Chris Murphy flies in, and he says, I got a great plan for you. We're not going to tell anybody it's you, Michael. And we're looking at him, what? This way, people will have to figure out it's you. Well, that wasn't the reason that he just was so concerned Michael would do well with his solo album that would be the end of INXS.
Next, Hutchence returned to the movies, playing poet Percy Shelley in Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound.
Michael was something of a shot in the dark, and I was, as I say, pleasantly surprised. As a matter of fact, really almost overjoyed at his performance. He was an excellent actor.
The experience got Michael thinking about his future.
He did say that he thought the career of a rock star was the career of a young man. And that's when I talked to him about making a transition to being an actor.
Fans of INXS, accustomed to a steady stream of hits, were puzzled by the band's low profile. Rumors of a breakup began to spread. So in 1990, the 30-year-old rock star dutifully returned to the fold. The occasion, the band's 10th anniversary album, X.
You know, we're very different people.
But Hutchence began to act precisely like a solo artist when INXS launched a grand tour to promote the album.
They wouldn't see him for 12 hours for a gig. He'd just suddenly turn up at sound check.
Michael was hitting the social circuit hard. On stage, the talented singer was all business. But when the shows ended, the real party began.
When he was fucked up, he was actually quite fun. If there was something there to do, and it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, let's go for it with every single thing you have.
But that pace started to catch up with Hutchence. He began turning up, strung out on drugs.
They couldn't get him up. He was alive, but unconscious. They had to get him dressed, carry him to the airport, wheel him on a wheelchair into first class, strap him in his seat.
The tour was a success, but the turmoil that surrounded Michael's life had the performer longing for stability. And in 1992, while visiting Denmark, tragedy struck.
I mean, he got knocked over by, I think it was a cab while he was on a bicycle or something, and he hit his head on the floor. I was quite shocked about how serious it was.
Michael suffered nerve damage that greatly affected 2 of his 5 senses.
He lost his sense of smell and taste. Not altogether, but in a fairly big degree.
With Christensen at his side, Hutchence was laid up for 6 months. But the physical injuries were only part of the problem. Michael's mental health also suffered. During his convalescence, the 32-year-old singer began taking the antidepressant Prozac. Almost immediately, friends and family witnessed a significant change in behavior. Brother Rhett Hutchence.
From then on, he was an angry young man. He changed. He was a different person. It's ironic because he's gotten to a stage where he can afford the best restaurants in the world, and then now you can't taste it.
Despite his injuries and state of mind, Hutchence answered the call of the band. In 1993, INXS recorded Full Moon, Dirty Hearts. The album appealed to Michael's progressive musical instincts, but the public didn't buy it. None of the record's singles reached the top 20. Record producer Nile Rodgers.
The physical law isn't adding up. You're doing your best, and the public is saying it stinks. You're trying your hardest, and it's not yielding any positive results.
As 1993 drew to a close, Hutchence was drained, emotionally, physically, and creatively. By the early 90s, after more than 10 years as the heart and soul of INXS, rock star Michael Hutchence was at a crossroads. A serious accident left him physically and emotionally scarred, and the band's 9th album bombed.
I and Mike began to realize that the band wasn't what it used to be, that he himself was a different person.
In 1994, 34-year-old Michael Hutchence began to grow apart from his girlfriend of 2 years, 25-year-old supermodel Helena Christensen. Since Michael's accident in 1992, the singer's behavior had become erratic.
He got angry at the drop of a hat, sort of thing. It wasn't like Michael that I'd known before.
Michael was in need of a change, and he found it in 34-year-old British television host Paula Yates. 8 years earlier, in 1987, Hutchence met Yates when he appeared on her morning show.
Paula had a television show where she used to interview people on her bed, and Michael was one of the people she interviewed. And probably somewhere early in the piece they might have had a little tete-a-tete, and then there was quite a long period where they didn't see each other.
Michael moved on with his life, but ever since their first meeting, Yates reportedly carried a torch for the INXS lead singer. Michael's mother, Patricia Glassop.
Sometimes he'd be with somebody and she'd just turn up, like in another country.
A strong, enigmatic woman, Yates had a colorful past. She posed nude as a teenager in Penthouse, authored 2 books, and had 3 children with her husband of 13 years, Live Aid promoter Bob Geldof.
Bob is a very incredibly powerful person in England, not just because of Live Aid, but also because he has his own multimedia company that did all these TV shows in England. So he's very hooked in with the media.
But by 1994, Yates' marriage to 41-year-old Geldof was all but over, and Paula turned her attention to Hutchence. For Michael, there was something about Paula that seemed to work.
Paula could ground Michael, but she could also be as raunchy as Michael. She could be as drugged out as Michael. She could be as rock and roll as Michael.
By the end of 1994, Paula separated from Geldof, and Michael officially broke up with Helena. Yates and Hutchence were the hot celebrity couple, and the relationship was splashed all over the tabloids. Michael was cast as a homewrecker.
They sort of portrayed him as this nasty, rough rock and roller. How dare he come in and sort of put himself up against Sir Bob Geldof, who's, Saint Bob Geldof.
Geldof was indeed held in high esteem in England, knighted by Queen Elizabeth for his humanitarian work on Live Aid.
I think it's so ironic that Live Aid was Bob, there's Michael, and there's Paula there, and all of a sudden, somehow all this draws together, this triangle, you know, over the years it comes closer and closer until...
Hutchence and Yates set up residence in London where their every move was scrutinized.
Michael had enjoyed a really wonderful relationship with the press his whole career. What astounded him was that the British press, in particular, turned on him.
But the press acted no different than usual, according to editor of Red magazine, Catherine Brown.
Michael and Paula have used the press, you know, for their own gain as well as the other way round. I think the relationship between famous people and the press, it's like a mutual love-hate relationship.
Michael, however, no longer possessed the patience for such intrusions, and whenever the media got too close, Hutchence lashed out.
But I don't know, the paparazzi just, I mean, I know he knocked a couple of them around, but maybe I think they deserved it.
Fed up with the relentless media hounding, Hutchence was in no mood to perform or record. In November of 1995, the couple escaped to Michael's home in the south of France. 9 months later, on July 22, 1996, a daughter was born, given the unlikely name of Heavenly Hirani Tiger Lily.
The birth of Tiger just cleared the air and gave him a new zest in life, and he was just so besotted with Tiger Lily.
But with fatherhood came responsibility, and Michael began to crave his days of freedom.
He was a loving, caring father that adored Paula and Paula's children and his own child very much. But he was also a scoundrel, you know. He wanted to drink and stay up all night and womanize and all those things.
Hutchence kept his desires in check, for Paula needed his support in more ways than one.
Michael was chivalrous, and I think he really wanted to help Paula out of the situation that she was in.
The situation concerned Paula's 3 children with husband Bob Geldof. The couple divorced in 1996. That set the stage for a bitter custody battle. Hutchence was committed to Paula and the girls, as committed as he would allow himself.
Marriage, on the other hand, was not something that Michael was big on. It just wasn't his thing.
But marriage was Paula's thing, and Yates wanted to formalize the relationship with Hutchence.
Yeah, he's stuck in the middle between the Paula-Bob breaking up dynamic, the Michael and Paula dynamic, the Michael-Bob dynamic, and he's just in nowhere land, really.
The battle lines were drawn, and Michael was right in the middle.
And it got so bizarre that they moved into Paula got Bob's house, and they moved into it, and Bob moved into Michael's house that he'd bought, and it was a weird situation. It was the most incestuous, strange situation.
In 1994, singer Michael Hutchence and British TV host Paula Yates began a torrid affair. The relationship produced a child in 1996, but there was little family bliss. The pending custody battle over Paula's 3 children by ex-husband, Live Aid promoter Bob Geldof was contentious, and the media circus surrounding Hutchence never stopped.
They went into his personal life very definitely, and with vengeance. I mean, it was brutal.
The chaos that had become Michael Hutchence' daily life seemed to have no limits. In September 1996, while Michael, Paula, and their daughter Tiger Lily were away, the child's nanny, Anita Debney, discovered erotic Polaroids of the couple in a bedroom drawer.
The nanny was so shocked by the pictures because, wow, how could anybody get in positions like that?
Straight missionary position sex for Michael wasn't good enough. It had to have something else to it. Sex, that became tedious. Always had to inject something into it.
The photos weren't all. Debney also found opium under the couple's bed. Neither Michael nor Paula were known to indulge in the substance.
Maybe if it was 1880, you'd think there might be opium involved, but yeah, I mean, it was just a complete setup. The Sun and the News of the World and those sort of tabloids were there as the police arrived.
No charges were pressed, but the damage was done. Geldof won temporary custody of his 3 daughters. Hutchence was shell-shocked.
He was changing subjects drastically. I wasn't quite sure what he was saying because he was sort of talking about getting married to Paula and then talking about getting away at the same time from everything.
In 1997, INXS released Elegantly Wasted. The title was perhaps a sarcastic reflection of Michael's troubles. but the music didn't resonate with fans or critics. Once the hippest band on earth, INXS were now considered rock dinosaurs. 1997, after 2 decades with INXS, the magic was gone.
It was killing him in the sense of what happened, but internally trying to become Michael Hutchence that he was in 1987.
And Michael's alienation from the band continued.
Towards the end, they had very little in common. Andrew owned a cattle farm up in the Northern Territory and Mike owned a house in the south of France. The rest of the INXS sort of grew comfortably into middle age and he was still growing up.
But Hutchence felt a sense of loyalty to his mates.
He still felt incredibly responsible for a large group of people. After a while, that's going to wear you down.
To escape the madness, the singer flew to Los Angeles in October 1997 to work on a solo album. Hutchence also hoped to revive his dormant acting career. Michael's busy LA schedule included meetings with some of Hollywood's A-list filmmakers.
He'd been talking to Quentin Tarantino. Michael Douglas tended to think that he said, "I think you can sell some popcorn."
The trip to Los Angeles recharged Michael's batteries, but only temporarily. The decline of INXS, the challenge of a solo career, the Yates-Geldof struggle, and the relentless crush of the press weighed heavily on Hutchence. Actor Leif Garrett.
There was a lot on his mind. It seemed like that there was definitely a lot of stuff going on in his head that he was thinking about.
On Monday, November 17th, Hutchence left Los Angeles for Sydney to begin a tour to jumpstart sales of Elegantly Wasted. The tour marked the 20th anniversary of INXS. The other members of the band predicted a comeback. Hutchence saw it as a swan song. In April 1997, INXS and lead singer Michael Hutchence released their final album, Elegantly Wasted. After 20 years, 10 albums, and millions of miles on the road, Hutchence was burned out. His personal life was going up in flames, but a trip to Los Angeles put him back on track, or so it seemed.
I'm going to Australia, I'm getting these gigs out of the way, I'm coming back.
On November 18th, 1997, Michael's flight from LA landed in Australia. 37-year-old Hutchence checked into the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Double Bay, an upscale suburb of Sydney. Meanwhile in London, girlfriend Paula Yates, their daughter Tiger Lily, and 2 of Paula's daughters were making plans to join Michael for the holidays.
They were all going to come out and have Christmas with his family, and he was really looking forward to that.
2 days later, Red Hutchence arrived at the Ritz-Carlton and phoned his brother from the lobby.
We were having this sort of a bit of a brotherly spat, sort of Mexican standoff. I didn't want to go upstairs and he didn't want to come downstairs. We ended up having this little tiff on the phone, and so he said, "Oh look, I'll see you next year."
On Friday, November 21st, Michael and the band rehearsed. They ended the session and agreed to meet again the next morning. Later that night, Michael joined his father, Kelland, for dinner at a nearby restaurant.
We had a lovely dinner together. We reminisced, and he told us about how thrilled he was that there was an opportunity coming up for a small part in a Tarantino movie. And he talked about Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. And I said to him through dinner, actually, and I said to him, grabbed his hand, I said, "Look, you know, I know you're feeling in a great mood tonight, but I know there's a lot of things deep down worrying you. Would you like to talk about it, you know? Can I help in any way?" He said, "No, Dad." He said, "Everything's okay."
But everything wasn't okay. Kelland dropped his son off at the Ritz-Carlton at about 10:30 p.m. Instead of going to bed, Hutchence went to the hotel bar where he flirted with 2 young female fans. Then, at around 11 p.m., an old girlfriend, Kim Wilson, and her boyfriend, Andrew Raymond, showed up. Hutchence invited Wilson and Raymond to his room. He was expecting a call from Paula with news about her ongoing custody battle with Bob Geldof.
The only thing he was worried about that day was a court decision on whether the girls could leave London with Tiger and Paula. But he didn't think that there was going to be any great problem.
Michael partied for hours with Wilson and Raymond, drinking beer, champagne, and vodka cocktails. Most of the conversation was about Paula and the kids and their arrival for Christmas. At 4:30 a.m., Raymond and Wilson left. An hour later, Hutchence received a phone call from Paula. Yates said that Geldof had changed his mind and that the girls would not be coming for Christmas. Hutchence was furious. He immediately placed a call to Geldof. But Michael's irate pleas fell on deaf ears. Hutchence then rang ex-girlfriend Michelle Bennett, who lived in Sydney, and with whom Michael remained friends. Bennett wasn't home. He next attempted to reach his personal manager, Martha Troop.
And this now would be about 9:30 in the morning, Australian time. And it was a terrible message. Again, he never got angry at me. He might get angry at a situation. And it was vicious. I want out of here.
Hutchence left messages for Troop at her home, but she was at her New York office where she received another call.
The tour manager called me and said, I just got a message from Michael saying he's not going to rehearsals.